Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If I can call this meeting to order. We will be following two agendas this evening. We'll be following our Committee of the Whole agenda as well as our Council meeting, which will in fact ratify most, if not all, the discussions we have during our Committee of the Whole. We will start off this evening's agenda with a prayer from Councillor B. Kenny, followed by the National Anthem by Mr. Joe Longfellow. Councillor Kenny.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for thy blessings. Lord, as we continue to undertake the role of a leader, let us be affirmed by the servant leadership we witnessed in your Son, Jesus. Let us walk in his path that he has set, and let those who will follow. Let our greatest passion be compassion, our greatest strength, love, our greatest victory, the reward of peace. In leading, let us never fail to follow. In the loving, let us never fail. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Joel. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As my pleasure, and my pleasure as always.
I threw you off this time, didn't I? Thanks, Joel. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there are no addendum items.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Confirmation of the agenda, members of council. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Doucette. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? I am going to disclose an interest that I have. I do have a conflict with the memorandum from the Chief Executive Officer, or Chief Administrative Officer, I should say, Robert Heil, with respect to entering into an agreement from, or for sponsorship of the Skateboard BMX Park, as our family business is going to be gifting $10,000 to the park itself, so I will declare a conflict due to that gifting. And we'll be stepping aside from that report. With that, without further conflicts, I will ask members of council if they have any items they would like to have separate discussion on. Councillor Desmarais?
Item 3.
Thank you. Further items, members? Oh, come on, Kenny, you got to have something. You're being good tonight. You're good tonight. Councillor Danch.
Item 6.
Further items, members? Councillor Elliott.
Item 5.
Further items? Councillor Steele, if you can get item 11 for me, please.
Pardon?
Item 11 for the conflict. And I would also, I think I'll let that one go, Dan, with respect to the Seaway. You're pretty comfortable with that one? Okay, I'll let that one go. And that should do it. Okay, so that's it, guys. So let's move on to motion to accept the remainder of the items. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Doucette. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. I'll now move on to presentations, and I will do those at the podium. Members of council and those in the gallery as well as watching on COGECO, it's a pleasure for me to be here tonight on behalf of all of you to recognize and honor a few members of our staff that have put 25 continuous years of service to you, the residents of Port Colborne, on behalf of the corporation of the City of Port Colborne. Those two individuals are here, or one is here this evening. I don't see the second one here. He must still be working. The first being Janice Payton, and the second being Mr. Steve Augustine, again, for the 25 years of continued service with the City of Port Colborne. So first, I'd like to invite Janice Payton up. Janice has prepared a 15-minute speech. Members of Council, Janice, as you know, joined City Hall on Clarence Street on August 3rd, 1987, as our water clerk cashier. She was a newlywed, living in Port Colborne at the time, and it gave her an opportunity to work within the City of Port Colborne. I believe you were working out of town at the time.
Yes, I was.
Yeah. She stayed in corporate services, moving over to accounts payable 3 years later, a position she maintained for 13 years. An opportunity then presented itself to move into engineering and operations, and in this department, take over as executive assistant to the director of engineering and operations. She has worked for 3 different directors, adapting to each personal style, and continues to serve staff and residents of her community with a friendly smile and her commitment to her job. And I can say that firsthand because every time I go to that second floor, she got 2 pictures of her daughters, and she's always smiling, and she's always greeting people with that smile, and of course, very cordial when she's doing business at the counter. It's my pleasure this evening to recognize Janice for her 25 years with a plaque as well as a watch. As well as we'll be sending her off to a 2-week vacation to Hawaii. And just kidding. Just kidding. Everybody now on COGECO land just fell off the couch. But but it all you two, and you're next. But it's my pleasure on behalf of members of City Council and all the residents of Port Colborne to really extend to Janice our sincere appreciation for your time, your 25 years here, and I'm sure many more, and for everything that you do. And before I do present Janice with her plaque and watch, I know she's prepared all day a 20-minute speech, and so I'm going to ask her if she wants to say any words. No?
Well, I just want to say that the 25 years have been thoroughly enjoyable, and I hope I can work here for many more years.
I see you hesitated on that one.
I was trying to figure out how many more years I have to work here.
But it is a pleasure, members of council, to present to Janice, and I'll read the plaque to you, presented to Janice Payton in recognition of 25, I'm going to put these on, 25 years of dedicated service to the citizens of the City of Port Colborne on behalf of members of council and signed by myself. So Janice, congratulations, well done, and thank you. Thank you. And here's a nice plaque for you as well.
Thank you very much.
Great work, great job. Thanks, Janice. Picture. Oh, Marianne, you did some with your hair. It's different. We'll go out here, Janice. I don't see Steve here this evening, but I still want to recognize Steve because of all the work that he's done, and I know how much work he does, and I think he deserves that. I do as well want to extend our appreciation on behalf of you folks around the Horseshoe, but more importantly, the folks that reside here in the city, and recognizing Steve Augustine with respect to the work that he's done on our behalf. Steve joined our operations department, Public Works Department, on December 14th, 1987, on the ground floor as a laborer. 3 years later, he was appointed as an equipment operator in the Works Department. Shortly thereafter, he moved up to Equipment Operator Class 3, a position he maintains today here in our community. And I can say this firsthand. You know, Steve is just simply a model employee. He's very conscientious, hardworking. He has continued to serve the residents of our community with a quiet smile and pleasant manner. Now, if you know Steve Augustine at all, Steve is a big boy. And he's sort of like the quiet giant, where you see him and it's like, but yet he's got that pleasant smile, that pleasant demeanor about himself, very polite, very quiet, and just goes about his work as he has. It's my pleasure to recognize Steve this evening. Although he's not here, I will ensure that he gets his plaque and his watch. But equally, if not more important, is a note of recognition that we as council and as a community give to Steve. So, Steve, if you happen to be watching this on TV, we would just want to say thank you for the night you've given us as residents of Port Colborne, and of course, as council and administration here on behalf of the corporation, everything you do to contribute as part of the team. So, to Steve, thank you. We truly appreciate your contributions. Next, we have delegations, and we have one delegation this evening. We have Ms. Karen Stern. Karen, members of council, is the Executive Director of Heart Niagara, and Karen is going to present 3 public access defibrillators to the City of Port Colborne. Is Karen here this evening? There she is. Karen, welcome. Chief, why don't you come on down? Karen, welcome.
Oh, okay. And no trip to Hawaii? Just asking. There's a watch. Steve's the trouble. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council and guests. Thank you for inviting Heart Niagara today. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. Port Colborne is a great community and has been a great supporter of Heart Niagara for our last 35 years. So it's exciting for me to be able to work with Chief Cartwright to once again strengthen the community preparedness in this community. As you know, CPR is critical, and it will save lives, and that training is essential, but another piece is to make sure that we can respond quickly with public access defibrillators and AEDs. And so tonight I have if you would come down, I can present you one. I didn't make you carry all 8 cases and all the other units, because one of the great things about your community is how committed you are. So you will actually be placing 8 new cabinets and 6 new defibrillators, because as a community you've made this decision to do this. This particular one was from a group of volunteers called the Niagara Pedal Angels, and they actually raised the money for this one for the library. And then the Heart and Stroke Foundation has supported the second 2 units. And of course, the city has been gracious enough to top that up so that you will be well prepared in case of emergency.
Excellent.
So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Great.
Chief, did you want to come up and say anything? You're never a loss for words, Chief.
Thanks, Karen. Your Worship, and thank you. Members of Council, just to give you a quick overview of where they'll be located, our plans are to put 4 of them into the new facility, 3 in the open area for the community, the arenas and so on, and 1 in the YMCA. There'll be 1 placed in the library, 1 in City Hall. The reason for City Hall in particular is because it'll serve both City Hall because of the numbers of people that come and go, plus the market across the road. There'll be 1 located there. There'll be another 1 located at the Public Works facility, even more so when it moves to its new location on Highway 58, a little further from where the emergency services will be located. And the last one will be going to Roselawn. We're in the process of working that process through with health and safety, because there's a lot of training that has to take place for city employees. But they will be located in those locations over the next several months. So again, Karen, thank you very much, and we do appreciate that and the support of council. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And once again, thank you, Karen.
Thanks very much. So my last remark is kind of springing this on the chief, but this is CPR month, and we are hoping that we can do 1 community CPR blitz here in Port Colborne in the next few weeks, and hopefully we can do it at the fire hall so that people get an opportunity to come out. It's the best 2 hours of your life that you never want to use. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Just a few words. First of all, we'll put this front and center because we may need this tonight. Taking into consideration we're talking
Chief,
about
I'll be
wastewater rates. But I do want to say to Karen a great big thank you. Because as you just stated, CPR, especially for those out in the community, especially for parents, quite frankly, to learn CPR is extremely important. There are situations where you might find yourself in. I know I found myself in a situation like that a few years back, and quite frankly, it may not have turned out as well as it did if in fact CPR wasn't administered. So, by all means, that message has to get out there loud and clear with respect to folks learning CPR. And the second little plug I want to give Heart Niagara is our appreciation for your participation in creating the Niagara Sport Commission. As members of council do recognize, I do chair the Niagara Sport Commission, and these are the folks that really got it off the ground. Heart Niagara were, in particular, Dr. Doug Munkley and Karen, were very instrumental in ensuring that Sport Niagara, which promotes sport tourism and, of course, healthy lifestyles throughout the region, they were the impetus behind that. So I really want to pass on to Karen, and I always wanted to do this when I had the chance, and here's the chance.
Oh, thank you very much.
Our true appreciation for your involvement in creating the Niagara Sport Commission.
Well, that's
well
great.
done.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, if I may, I'm going to move right into to my mayor's report, and this evening I'm going to do something a bit different because of an issue that was brought, obviously, to your attention within the last week from regional council, and I'm going to somewhat meld both my mayor's report and the regional council's report together this evening to ensure that members of council get a full update report on the 2011 wastewater reconciliation that we've all read in the paper. I'm sure residents have read in the paper. That was introduced to regional council last Thursday. And as council is aware, the regional municipality of Niagara presented last Thursday their water and wastewater budgets to regional council, and the media has reported that that Port Colborne faces a $384,000 deficit for wastewater and will cost the homeowners $75 per household due to overuse of the system and flows higher than were actually predicted in years prior. I do want to assure all of council, as well as members of the public, that this is not the case, and that city council has managed the water and wastewater rates to ensure that such an increase is not incurred by the homeowner. The region is responsible for providing an annual cost to supply water and dispose of wastewater from each lower tier municipality. The actual rate setting is established at the lower tier with a local budget for costs while incorporating the supply costs from the region. Every municipality and members of council determines their rates at the local level. With regard to the 2011 wastewater reconciliation, as council is aware, this matter was addressed with the 2012 water wastewater budget. This was contained within Report 2012-15, which we have copied for you and is at your stations this evening, as well as a memo from our Director of Corporate Services outlining the procedures upon the way the report identifies and attaches itself to reconciliation from 2011. This report as well speaks of and reports on the reconciliation cost to the city at the amount of $383,983. It was reported that this amount will be billed by the region as part of the annual requisition for the 2013 budget. And in fact, council, and you'll recall this, we did prepare and were diligent in setting aside funds to pay for this cost. So essentially, a lot of what's been transpiring, especially within the last 48 to 72 hours, we felt it important, and when I say we, I mean Councillor Barrick, as well as staff here and staff at the region, thought it was important to really bring this forward this evening so that it's understood within the community, but equally as important, obviously, by members of council. So what I'm going to do, what I want to do is two things, and I'm going to pass it on to David in a second. But I do also want to give council the thought, while listening to the presentations that are about to be given, is how important and how this process since last Thursday impresses upon how important it is to really continue to have established that rate stabilization fund, and how important it is, based on the current system at the regional level with respect to reconciliation, Yes, we have our good years, like we did a few years ago where we got a refund, but how important it was for us then, and it will be in the future for us, to bring that money as a surplus into a stabilization reserve, so that therefore when this happens, that we'll have that money there to cover that imbalance with respect to reconciling the amount, in this case, that we were short. So again, I do want to impress that upon council to continue to fund through those surpluses. In turn, it will find its way back to the ratepayers when those surpluses aren't evident throughout any particular year. So now, if I can now ask Councillor Barrick, Regional Councillor David Barrick, to introduce our guest from the region, Mrs. Betty Matthews-Malone. Councillor Barrick.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate those comments in your mayor's report, and I certainly concur. I won't duplicate those this evening. I will say this, however, that the reconciliation model that's in place now, I do believe, when properly managed, is a better, more equitable system than what we used to have. So to an attempt to add additional clarity on some of the issues, I have extended the invite to a member of the regional team. She has been with Haldimand and Hamilton, and we've been lucky to have her with the Region of Niagara for the last 5 years as a resident expert. She's the Director of Water and Wastewater Services, and I'd like to thank her in advance for coming out this evening and taking her personal time on short notice to come out. Betty Matthews-Malone will join us this evening and try to add some clarity to this as well. Betty?
Betty, welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to need some help putting up the presentation if I could. Okay, great. Mayor Badaway, members of council, staff, and area residents, thank you very much for the invite to come tonight. It's my understanding that you've all received a complete package of the slide deck that was presented to Regional Council last week during our water and wastewater budget deliberations. And what I've done tonight is I've sort of put together a smaller condensed package to target specifically Port Colborne. And I'm really seriously hoping that I won't need the defib tonight, but time will tell. So for looking solely at water, I'm just going to give a brief overview of our water budget as well. For 2013, our net budget is just a little over $42 million. Now this includes both our operating direct costs for our 6 water treatment plants, as well as our capital transfers for our capital program and debt repayment. It represents a 0.56% increase over our 2012 budget allocation, which is about $234K. So from a methodology standpoint, we employ 2 methods to cost recovery on water. The first is that 25% of that budget is assigned based on a fixed charge. So what we do is we look at the previous flows, water flows, these are water sales at a wholesale rate to the local municipalities that we service, and we apportion that 25% of the budget based on those historical flows. And for this year coming, or the 2013 year coming up, it's a little over $10.5 million. So the remaining 75% of the budget is then cost recovered based on a variable rate. And I'm sure that you've all seen the variable rates because you do a similar process here. What we do is we take the budget allocation and we divide it by the anticipated water sales. So this is the part of the process where we try to forecast and crystal ball what water sales we're going to experience throughout the region to set a variable rate. And at the regional level, because we're the wholesaler to 11 serviced area municipalities, that variable rate is the same for each and every municipality. So looking specifically at the Port Colborne, for the fixed allocation, your portion of that $10.5 million is your allocation for 2013 is 4.9% based on your previous 3-year water flows. That represents an annual requisition of about $518,000. The variable rate that we're recommending to council this year for 2013 is $0.534 per cubic meter. That represents, let's put 53.4 cents, that's easier to say, per cubic meter, which represents a 0.3 cent per cubic meter increase over last year's flows. So in 2012, the variable rate was 53.4, and the 2013 rate is 53.7. Now, wastewater. For wastewater, we have 11 wastewater treatment plants plus 1 lagoon operation. Our net budget is $65.4 million. We have a 3.7% increase recommended on wastewater over our 2012. We have other pressures on wastewater, which represents about a $2.4 million increase. The wastewater methodology also has two components to it from a cost recovery at a wholesale level. 100% of the net budget is cost recovered based on allocations to the 11 serviced municipalities. And we use the same methodology that we use when assigning the fixed water. So we go back in time and we look at the previous 3-year flows for wastewater that we've treated for Port Colborne, and we look at an average apportionment. However, last year, Regional Council formally introduced a reconciliation model. And so for 2013, we're reconciling those anticipated, or let's say the historical flows that were calculated for 2011, and then we're looking at the actual flows that we saw in 2011, and we're reconciling through the process next year. So 2011 will be reconciled in 2013. For Port Colborne, the allocation for standalone 2013 budget is 5.5%. And again, this is based on a 3-year average of historical wastewater flows that we've seen here at our plant, at our Seaway plant. And the corresponding amount is given. The reconciliation model compares, as I said, the number that is used to assign the allocation, which is based on history, and then it compares to actual flows. So what I've given here is I've given a summary for Port Colborne of the green represents your allocations based on that historical averaging, while the blue represents your actual flows. So in the past, you have seen a rebate of a total of $318,000. 2011, however, was a slightly different year. 2011 was extremely wet. We see a lot of changes to wastewater flows because of snowmelt, wet conditions. You may see an industry changing an internal process, so there may be less wastewater flows. There are a lot of things that can impact wastewater flows. And so you'll see some of the impacts that. And I would say that for 2011 was an extremely wet year. We treated approximately 1.4 times more wastewater at our wastewater treatment plants than we produced water. So we did see a fair amount coming to the plant. So the 2011 reconciliation payment for Port Colborne is the $384,000. Now, before I open the floor to questions, I wanted to address some of the numbers that have been floating around and some of the numbers that have been reported in the media. One of the things that we experience when we're presenting to Regional Council is we're always asked, when we're looking at these types of numbers at the regional level, we want an idea as regional councillors what pressures the local municipalities could see as a result of the recommendations we're putting forward for their consideration relative to the budget. So we do make attempts to identify what those pressures could be. We try very, very carefully to express to council not to take that number verbatim, because the reality is that each of the local municipalities have a number of factors that they incorporate in setting their budget. So you may have different flows you're looking at. You may have different assessment growth. You may have other funding opportunities. You may have rate stabilization. So while some of the numbers that were bantered around as a result of I think it was last Thursday we were presenting, those were our attempts at trying to identify the pressures, but putting many, many disclaimers in there saying, please, it's subject to a number of things. And the bottom line that matters with impact to residents is set by the local municipalities. So I just wanted to reinforce that because I know that caused a lot of concern here as well as in other areas throughout the region. So that's the end of my presentation, and if there are any questions or you'd like to proceed with some other.
Thank you, Betty. Does members of council have any presentation or any questions before I go to Mr. Sinez? No? Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Betty did a very good job in presenting how the flows are calculated and how they transpire down to the local municipalities. So I won't reiterate a lot of those points, but what I do want to ensure council is that as the mayor mentioned, we did bring this forward to council when we were doing and looking at the 2012 budget. And in doing that, in 2011, we did have a surplus of about $322,000, of which council set aside in a reserve for this particular purpose. We knew that $384,000 was going to be a charge back in the 2013 budget to the region. So in 2011, we did have the surplus, basically in the same year, and that's because we did budget for higher flows, and therefore we were able to create that surplus in order to cover the cost of this reconciliation. So we have the $322,000. The difference, about $61,000, that was something that we did talk about, that we would look to 2012 and look at what type of surplus that we would hopefully have, and we're anticipating for 2012. And if not, we also still have a rate stabilization reserve of approximately $100,000. So I guess the bottom line comes to play is that the anticipated cost of the reconciliation will not have an increase to the rates for water or the wastewater rates for the homeowners. So that $75 that was in the paper, which was based on the $384,000, as Betty had mentioned, because we have the funding with regard to our rate stabilization reserve and the reserve that we set aside, that cost is covered, and council ensured that we weren't going to have that additional cost added on in 2013. So there will not be an additional cost with regard to the reconciliation. I think Betty mentioned obviously how the wastewater is determined. I think the key is that it is very unpredictable. Wastewater flows is very unpredictable for a number of the reasons that Betty mentioned. And the fact that the 3-year averaging takes place, we're not predicting that. It's based on past history. And then based on that 3-year average, it's compared to what actually happens in that year, which we have no control over. What happens is with regard to a wet season versus a dry season, and other variables that may be in place. So that makes that reconciliation an important part of the process. And in doing so, we have to go forward on a go-forward basis, ensure that we do continue to put away those surpluses in each of those years, that we do have that, so that we do pay for any of those reconciliation imbalances. We may have in the future years where we will have overpaid like we have in the past, and we'll be on the other side of the table. So I think those are important points for council and for the public and the media to understand going forward. I know we're doing a lot of CSO programs, and I know Ron is going to speak to that as to what we're trying to do to help reduce our wastewater flows. So that's very important. And I think the last part is that just to ensure that when we are considering our budget, that we do budget based on that 3-year average, and we base it on the costs that the region is billing us for that year, and that's what we pay for that year. And if we come in under or over, then we have the funds available to compensate for that going forward.
Thank you, Peter. Members of council, before I move on to Mr. Hanson, is there any questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Peter. Is there anything we could do to mitigate the fluctuations, to get more of a straight line? We're talking about in 2011 was a wet season, and this is what the $384,000 discrepancy was. And yet we seem to be negatively impacted more than other municipalities. And I guess the biggest question is why? Why do we have, under reconciliation, a bill outstanding to the region for $384,000 and other municipalities got a rebate? And I think when you see that, it's how do we mitigate that?
Through you, Mr. Speaker, I think a lot of those questions will be answered when Ron talks about the CSO program and where we're at, and he has a presentation to show you as to how those 3 years and the average. It's very difficult because the whole idea of the 3-year averaging is what is being used to try to mitigate those fluctuations. And it does mitigate it. If you were going on just trying to anticipate the flows, you could anticipate very low, and it's hard to anticipate what's going to happen next year with the weather. And the whole idea is to try to, in every, a lot of municipalities right now are looking at trying to mitigate it by trying to tighten up their systems, no different than what we are. And the thing is, as everybody starts to tighten up those systems, even though we may reduce our flows, in actuality, in 2012, 2013, our average for 2013, our average flows have actually reduced from 2012. But our costs overall are going up by 0.08%. And that's because of the overall costs are there, and as other municipalities' flows are changing, then it affects our flows. And so you could still see it go up or down. But I think the key is that the averaging is probably the best method to try to average those flows out and get the best guess, because it is unpredictable.
Thank you, Peter. Betty, do you want to comment on that?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, good. Speaking of which, and a lot of the residents watching on COGECO or even out in the gallery might think, what does rain have to do with this? Betty mentioned that it was a few years ago, or last year, it was 1.4% over the actual water usage being treated. How does that happen? Well, it happens because of infiltration, combined sewer overflows, and it's a perfect segue into Ron's presentation with respect to, okay, then fine, how do we balance that out, and what are we doing about it? Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, could you pull up that spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet? It's on the desktop. Yep. Okay. Just following up on Betty's comments in terms of unpredictability of the weather. I mean, that's the main factor. Our challenge for us on the technical side and operations side, we have to try to mitigate as much as possible what we call II, inflow and infiltration. Once the weather is either wet or dry, that has a drastic effect on the sewage flows, on the wastewater flows. And you can see from the, if you can go to wastewater, Bob, 2013, I think it is. Yeah, one more over. That's it. What we can illustrate here is, if you look at 2012, for instance, we're talking about what impacts the weather have. 2012 was a very dry year during the summer, and you can see as you look at the average flows and the past flows from 2009, 10, and 11, you can see what the impacts of the dry weather was on the 2012 summer. If you look at January and February in 2012, where we thought we had a dry year, in fact, we didn't have any freezing during those months. It was a very warm winter. And all the precipitation that was evident, all the saturation in the ground, a lot of that finds its way into the sanitary sewer system, and thus we're treating it. If the ground had been frozen to a certain degree, like you see in 2009 probably, when the flows were much lower, less than half of what we experienced in 2012. You can see how the weather has a drastic impact on the total flows. This gives you an illustration of the wastewater flows right up to the current point in time, and the bottom line in here totals to September, gives you an illustration where we sit right now with 2012. So if we go to the next graph, Bob, which is a graphic of that, you can see we're talking about, as part of what Councillor Elliott's question was, is stabilization. If you look at those brown peaks, which are the 2011 peaks in the wastewater flows, this is an illustration of why the reconciliation for 2012 is so high and the way that it skews the 3-year average. And that's what we're living with right now in terms of the flows that you're seeing and the larger total flows for the 3-year average. If you look at the flows from 2009, 2010, you'll see that everything was fairly smooth in terms of the flows and the seasonal precipitation, and everything worked out fairly well. But then we had this very wet season, and if you go back, we're not going to show it right now, but in one of the previous graphs, we had 2008 on it, and you saw a similar situation in 2008 where the wastewater flows actually spiked during that very wet summer. So that sort of leads into what we do with the CSO program. CSO program, as Council is well aware, we started the main thrust of that in the arena area in 2008. And with the assistance of the region, with their CSO management program, we were able to leverage the funding that's available at 50% from the region and apply for funding to augment our capital wastewater budget that we have each year. With that, we've attacked these specific areas on the CSO. And what it is an attempt to reduce II, infiltration and inflow, from the system. And what that does is really stabilize and manage the flows if you're successful with the CSO program. And we think we've been very successful in the arena area, for instance, which Council saw our presentation last November on the wrap-up of that particular program. We found some substantial leaks in that area. And I think you can see if you go to 2011, where the peaks were sort of in the range of 685, 630, very, very high flows. Right at that time, we were repairing that leak on First Avenue, which was a very large leak, and you can see the flows really dropped off after that point. That certainly contributed to the reduction in flows. So the CSO program really helps to mitigate sort of these peaks if you're successful on them. We've moved on after arena. We're in the Omer area now, as Council knows. We've identified 80 or 90 direct sanitary sump pump connections to the sanitary sewer system, and we're working at redirecting those into the storm sewer systems where they're available. One of the problems in Omer is that there aren't sufficient storm sewers available in a few areas like Wallace, Borden, a few of those areas. So we're working as well on creating proper outlets through the CSO program to take the flows from the sump pumps without creating flooding for the area residents. We've also been successful at getting funding from the Water Smart program, which is directed through the region. And we've got funding for some of the storm sewer study work that has to be done in Omer, and also we've been successful in the Nickel Street area. Now we have a 3-year program in Nickel where there's been over 120 direct sump pump connections to the sanitary sewer system in the Nickel area. We've been into all those homes there. We're identifying the storm sewer conditioning over there, and also looking at repairs into the sanitary sewer system. So Council's been very supportive in the CSO program and going in this direction, and we're hoping that as this continues on, that it's going to be very beneficial in mitigating this problem that you're seeing now with the flows from 2011. If anybody has any questions, I can answer on the CSO.
Thanks, Ron. Great job. Betty, anything to add?
Just maybe one thing just to add, as Ron mentioned, we do offer a partnership program on CSO reduction. We've had a lot of success with Fort Colborne. We actually recommended to Council that we double the capital allocation this year. If we're successful in getting our capital budget passed, we'll have $6.6 million in that partnership funding. So what that does is it leverages another 50% from the local municipalities as well. So we're hoping that we'll be successful in getting that, and we'll be able to get some great applications from the local municipalities in January.
Count on it. Ron, get those applications in. Thanks, Betty, and thanks, Ron, and thank you, Peter. Well stated. Questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thanks. Just a quick question to Ron. I guess not a question, but I'd like you to make a statement. In my business, as we visit some houses, there's quite a few sump pumps that I've seen that are directly connected to the sanitary sewers. Can you just let people know how bad that is, and if you've got your sump connected to the sanitary sewer, what you should do?
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Elliott raises a great point, because the CSO and the II program isn't restricted to those 3 areas. We're concentrating on those, but certainly any area where we have a problem where somebody's connected and wants to disconnect, council has passed a sewer use bylaw, which offers some incentives for redirection of these sump pumps. And we have had cases already where people have come forward and said, I want to get this redirected and so on. So we can certainly do that. We have people on staff that will go out, do an inspection on it, and then determine how these inflow areas can be redirected into the storm sewer system. So certainly come forward with that, and we'd be happy to assist.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Further questions or comments? Just a few comments, and I think, Dave, you bring a great point up, because although some pumps do contribute to the problem, I won't say it's a big percentage of the problem. I think a lot of it has to do with cracks in the system and in an old system that we've inherited, and with that, trying to keep up with bringing the system up to date with respect to those cracks and leaks and therefore infiltration that's happening within the system. But I think as well what has to be recognized, and that, I think that number, Betty, that you brought forward is alarming. 1.4% over the water usage, which is, even in terms of water, you think water being then treated, not all the water gets treated. Some ends up in gardens, lawns, cleaning cars. So that percentage is even higher with respect to what it really should be. And that's alarming. So I think all across Niagara, we all have to take into consideration being aggressive with respect to the CSO program. And I do have to take this opportunity here to congratulate this council and probably the past 3 or 4 councils that have been very aggressive with respect to being very kind to Ron when he comes forward with his budget, to really take very seriously the need to address those CSO programs. And to you, Betty, as well in the region, compliment you folks for allowing us those 50-cent dollars. I know it really helped out in the West Side Arena area. Ron highlighted the areas that see less flows now, therefore less CSOs, therefore less clean water being treated. But as well, now getting into the Welland Street, Omer Avenue, as well as Nickel Street areas. Hopefully that can, being that aggressive, can compound those savings with respect to what we're seeing today. So great job to all you guys at staff, and congratulations to council for sticking to your guns with respect to the capital work that has to be done. So with no further comments, Betty, you're fine? Peter, you're good? Ron, you're good? Members of council, questions, comments further? Great. Thanks, guys. Betty, I really appreciate your time tonight, too. Thank you. Regional Councillor Barrick, if we'll flow right into your regional council's report. If you want to add anything to the regional efforts, floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to get this message out tonight. And thanks to this council, the local council, and because of the foresight in effect creating the stabilization reserve fund, that means that our ratepayers in Port Colborne won't be dealing with spikes in their water bills, 1, and 2, can rest assured that the region and the city are working together, as clearly demonstrated tonight, and through with various programs that we work together on. Some of the items I did want to mention tonight as well that are aside from water, wastewater, just a couple of dates that are coming forward. One is regarding Aging Well in Niagara, a conversation about the needs of seniors. Aging Well in Niagara is a community conversation about the needs of seniors. The project will help guide the evaluation and design future programs, services, and resources for seniors in Niagara. Folks can participate by completing the Aging Well in Niagara survey on the region's website, and are invited to attend a conversation cafe at the Friends Over 55 Social Center at 554 Fielden Avenue. That's on December 6th from 1:30 to 3 o'clock. Further, household hazardous Waste Depot. I get asked about this question quite a bit. And the one for Port Colborne is coming up very soon, November 17th, at the Humberston Arena. So that's for the Household Hazardous Waste Depot. That's from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And of course, additional information can be found on the region's website there as well. And finally, Mr. Mayor, just a notice, I believe it's been in the paper as well, about public information center session here at City Hall in Council Chambers regarding a couple of projects. One is the Clark Street sewage pumping station, and one is regarding the Johnston Street sewage pumping station. Both projects involve replacement of pumps, piping, electrical components, including new generators, fencing, and site work. And again, for those area residents who may have concerns or would like more information on those particular projects, there's a public information session being held here at Council November 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. So those are my additional comments to tonight's session.
Thank you, David. Members of council, are there any questions or comments to the regional councilor? With none? Thanks, Dave. Great work. Members, we're now going to move on to councilors' items, new business. Are there any councilors' items? Councilor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just something I'm bringing forward that, if everybody noticed, I shaved my goatee. I'm now growing a stash for Movember, which raises funds and awareness for prostate cancer. And if you go to ca.movember.com, under Don's Dusters, we have a team together through Don Cherries that quite a few people from Port Colborne have signed up for. You can donate, whether it's on my little page or whoever's there that you know, throw a few bucks towards that. Each team is trying to raise more money than the other. It's a good contest for a great cause. So as time goes on, we update our screens with newer pictures of our stashes, and people can write comments. We write comments. Actually, it's a lot of fun. So just making people aware of that, because like anything else, I'm sure not just prostate cancer, but all kinds of cancer has probably touched all of us in some one way or another. So I'm very happy to start that, because my whole goatee thing started a number of years ago when my youngest son, Rye, said, "Hey, Dad, why don't you get into Movember?" So I did, and it became the goatee, and the mayor's followed suit. Yours is gray like mine. So yeah, it can get that way. So please go to the site. No matter who you donate to, just donate. Read the information on there. It's great stuff. And cheer on Don's Dusters. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor Steele. Further new business. Councilor's items. Councilor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one item this evening, and it's about a problem that's existing just north of Fraser Street, off of Welland, on the west side of Welland Street. There's a little industrial area and some residences along there. There's been some break-ins in the trailers that exist there. The police have suggested that Canadian Niagara Power put a light, there is a standard there, put a light, directional lighting there to help alleviate the problem. The residents have contacted Canadian Niagara Power, and they have been told that the only way that can happen is through a letter from the city. So if we could possibly get a letter out to Canadian Niagara Power requesting a light be added to that area, it will certainly alleviate a lot of the problems. These are continual break-ins. Police were able to grab 2 people last week for some of the break-ins, but this is an ongoing problem.
Okay, Mr. Howe, comment?
Worship, I'm just not sure of the location. Is it private property? Is it city property?
Councilor?
Thank you. There is the Alma Street right away. There's a light standard right there, so it would be the light that we're talking about would be on city property.
Okay, so why don't we first off, no, you meant Fraser Street, right?
Alma.
Okay.
Alma.
Why don't we first of all ask for leave of council? If I can have a mover and seconder, please. Councilor Steele, Councilor Butters, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. And Councilor Desmarais, if you want to put a resolution forward, and what we can do is send CMP that resolution. We will have to get an exact location. I'm sure you can work with staff on that, but a resolution to install a light in that location as per council, as well as the NRP's suggestion, due to the circumstances that have arose. Okay, so if you want to put that forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to put that forward, that we follow through with a letter to CNP regarding the addition of a light on the existing light standard. There is a standard there. Directional lighting is what we're talking about.
Well, what I would do is I would just have them cost it out.
Okay.
Send it to us, and then, of course, we're gonna have to pay for that. So essentially, that would then come to our budget as per the costing that they would come forward to us with.
Okay, they did tell the homeowner that they would cover all the costs, but they required a letter directing it. So I'm not sure what that's.
Really?
That's what they said, that they would.
I like that.
They would cover.
That's different.
This is what they told the resident, and, that's the
Okay,
information
so
I have.
let's go with that resolution, with costing it out, and then we can have staff follow up with who's actually gonna pay the bill. But if I can have a seconder to that, Councillor Doucette? Are there any questions or comments to that? Members of staff, you're clear on that? We're fine on that? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Demeray. I'm going to go to Councillor Elliott, then to Councillor Butters. Councillor Elliott.
Just one quick question through you, I guess, to Ron. Somebody asked me this today, and I didn't even realize it. The parking lot at the new Health and Wellness Center. Gentleman was in and noticed there wasn't any catch basins or any drains. Is there a reason for that? He said it looks really relatively flat. Is the water going to pool and become icy in the wintertime? And how do you get the water away? I thought I'd ask.
Ron?
You, Mr. Mayor. Given the last 2 weeks of rainfall, the parking lot is working great. We're checking on a daily basis. There isn't a lot of catch basins there. It's all draining east to west to a large ditch. There's quite a bit of slope on it, actually. It's not flat. It's very sloped, and it's working very well. We've checked all the areas, so we're happy with it.
Okay. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to offer a resident's thanks to our staff. A couple of weeks ago, I brought it forward about the grass being not being cut out on the old Humberson School, and our staff got a hold of them, and they did come out and cut it, and the residents out there are very grateful to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Further new business, Councillor Danch.
Just a quick note for our Main Street merchants and a little bit of the BIA stuff there. We got some Christmas decorations out tonight, and we're going to see those going up on the poles real soon, so we'll be lighting up Main Street, and please come and visit us on Main Street. We'd love to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. Any further new business? Just as well, a quick note of appreciation to all those that took part in the Remembrance Day ceremonies this past weekend. I do want to thank Lakeshore Catholic. They held a wonderful ceremony, actually two of them on Friday. Some of the public schools as well had some ceremonies on Friday, both elementary and high school, as well as Northland Point and Porto Village. Both held ceremonies over at their locations. And finally, of course, the Legion putting on a wonderful ceremony over at the Cenotaph on Sunday. And I have to give extra mention and an extra shout out, I guess you'd call it, to the cadets, the Air Cadets and the Sea Cadets, who in fact held vigil, stood guard at the Cenotaph all night. They were there from the afternoon, from about 5 or 6 in the afternoon, all the way around the clock until the actual Cenotaph, the Remembrance Day ceremonies at 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. So to the Air and Sea Cadets for doing that. It was something extra special that was added to this year's celebrations. So to all those involved from the cadets, a great big thank you, because we can understand how difficult that must in fact have been, standing guard at the Cenotaph all night into the wee hours of the morning. The kicker to that was we had no problems in the park all night. Whatsoever. I was talking to some of the parents that were with the cadets, and they said a lot of the activities that would otherwise happen on a Saturday night at the park didn't happen, so that was a good thing. And I sort of asked her if they'd like to be hired for the weekends proceeding, especially during the summer. But in all seriousness, a great big thanks to the Air and Sea Cadets for doing something extra special this year. Councillor Butters?
Oh, I was just going to say, the Cenotaph out at Cedar Bay was also a well-attended ceremony, and thanks to the Bartok and Schoolies and St. John's Lutheran Church out there. It was a beautiful ceremony held there as well. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Councillor Butters. So with no further new business, I'll now move on to the adoption of the minutes. We do have a set of minutes of the 24th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated October 22nd, 2012. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Steele. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Members, with respect to the items requiring a separate discussion, we're going to start off with item 3. Councillor Demeray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Department of Community and Corporate Services, Community Services Division, report number 2012-33, subject skateboard and BMX park marine structure. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne approves staff to further investigate the construction of a marine-themed structure at Lock 8 for the purpose of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, and that the condition of approval be contingent on securing sponsorship funding that would cover all construction costs at no capital expense to the City of Port Colborne.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a second to that recommendation, please? Councillor Doucette. Questions or comments? Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that this was being investigated and would go forward at no cost, and just to underline that, because it is important to stem any problem before that it does occur. I've had a lot of comments about the cost of the skateboard park, and I want people to understand that this is how we would go forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doucette as a seconder. Did you want to comment? And then I'm going to go to Councillor Kenny.
The idea behind this, and the MIAC has discussed this over and over again, is that they would like to have an area where they can sell snacks and drinks. They will staff it for free. The idea is to help them continue on fundraising once it's built. They want to continue on doing that. They will staff it. They will handle it. They will buy the products. They will do everything. One of the first ideas they had, and I think everyone has to understand that, is that they were looking at taking the old lighthouse that was there, maybe finding a way of moving it over. We've been told that structurally, if we touch that, it's just going to fall apart. So it wasn't feasible. So the other idea was to see if we could get a sponsor, and that's what they're looking for. A sponsor to build this structure, and it will cost the city nothing, not a penny. And if they can find a sponsor to do that, they would be very happy to staff it and to do everything they can, and all the monies that are come in as a profit will come back to the city anyway to help with the fundraising. That's the idea behind it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kenny.
I was just wondering when they do go out, could they please include in that a maintenance to that building as well? Because that's what happens, they construct the building and then there's a maintenance attached to it year after year or every so many years. And so if there could be a maintenance attached to that proposal as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor. Further questions or comments on this report? Members, with none, your pleasure to the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 5. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne award project 2012-14 water main rehabilitation to Peters Excavating of Stevensville, Ontario for the total tendered price of $591,953.80 plus applicable taxes. Be that funding to the project 2012-14 be financed under accounts 3-595-33476-3326 for Clarence Street from Fielden to Steele, 3-595-33477-3328 Snyder Street from Elm to Fielden, 3-595-33478-3328 Elm Street from Maine to Rosedale, and 0-600-33580-3326 550 Elizabeth Street off Wellington Street, and C, that a contract bylaw where the city enters into a contract agreement with the contractor be prepared.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Danch. Questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Just a couple of quick questions, I guess, through you to Ron. I guess yes or no. In the report, it said that this company has done some work with us satisfactorily before. Are they the same company that did the Catherine Street project?
Through Mr. Mayor? No, absolutely.
Thank you.
I think that goes without saying.
And the second question is, when we're in the process of doing Elm Street from Maine to Rosedale, have we given forethought to letting the industries know up on Elm that we're going to do it, and are we going to plan a alternate truck route? Because there's an awful lot of trucks that go up and down Elm onto Maine.
Mr. Hanson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as a matter of course, we notify all the abutting properties, anybody that might be impacted by any water main shutoffs, very few people, this is basically a block or so, very few people will be impacted by this. This particular portion of the job isn't a water main replacement service realignment. So we can divert traffic and maintain lanes open on Elm Street so there doesn't have to be a detour. And it'll be just slight disruption to the people that are actually being reconnected to this particular water main. So it'll be minimal.
Okay, thanks. When I saw it, I thought that Casco, I know it's got a lot of trucks that come up and down there, and I wouldn't want them to be impacted with getting trucks stuck and damaged.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments? One of the things I wanted Council to be aware of as well, and Ron, you might want to speak on it, is the Collier Street West project. We don't see that here, and I'm assuming because it's a joint tender with the region. We're moving, the reason why I'm bringing this up, and this for two reasons, is one, to add attention to it, because we're going to see a heck of a lot of work pretty well just past Steele Street to, I believe, Omer or Oakwood?
Just to around Knoll.
Knoll, okay, so from Knoll, pretty well up east to King Street, along Collier West. We're seeing a total rehabilitation, a total reconstruction of the road, basically from where we left off when we hit Highway 3 to Knoll Street. With that as well, we're going to be doing some underground work. And Ron, if you can explain that, that way Council as well as the public's ready for it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the Collier Street project, there's a public meeting coming up on that, which is a good point. It's being done as a joint project with the region. The region's actually taking the lead on it. The water main within Collier Street is owned and operated by the City of Port Colborne. So in the 2013 budget, there are funds already allocated in the capital budget to do the water main on Collier Street. So that'll be tendered very early, probably February or March 2013. The construction of the water main will go forward first. As soon as that's done, and then the road reconstruction urban section will take place throughout the summer months in 2013.
Thank you, Ron. Hey, members, we'll now move on to the vote. Your pleasure to this. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 6. Councillor Danch.
Department of Engineering and Operations, Public Works and Parks Division's report number 2012-35, subject information report, TA land and complex storage building. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne approves a proposed location for the storage building and directs city staff to proceed with the project at the site south of the Vale Health and Wellness Center as recommended.
Thank you, Councillor. Have a seconder to that, please. Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? Councillor Danch.
I spoke with Ron there shortly this morning, I should say, and I just want him to explain the fact that there isn't a lot of extra space over at the Health and Wellness Center. I was fortunate enough to go through there today, and just so he can explain to the community that this is needed for the storage of equipment that's going to be used at the facility. If you could do that, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's exactly right, Councillor Danch. When we took a look at the design of the Valley Health and Wellness Center, it wasn't economical, it wasn't feasible really to build all the storage we require for our operations within the building at about $180 to $200 per square foot. So the decision was made, and there's very little additional space within the facility for storage. So we decided to put a building, a pole barn, a small pole barn directly adjacent to the parking lot where you get good access to the facility and to the park grounds. And we also needed the option of having power and water into the building. So this is a location that was proposed for it, and we just wanted to get council's concurrence on this location, to be sure everybody was on board with it, no surprises, and actually we're out to tender now, and hopefully council's going to concur with this location.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Councillor Danch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments on this report? With none, members, your pleasure to the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We're now going to move on to item 11, and I'm going to stand down and ask the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Butters, to take over. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Councillor Steele lifted this item
For the mayor's
for the
conference.
mayor. Okay, so could you proceed with that, Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Memorandum from Robert J. Heil, Chief Administrative Officer, re-entering into an agreement for sponsorship of the Skateboard BMX Park. that the memorandum from Robert J. Heil, Chief Administrative Officer, regarding entering into an agreement for sponsorship of the skateboard BMX park be received, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into gifting agreements for the sponsorship of the skateboard BMX park located at Lock 8 Park, Port Colborne.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Can I have a seconder to that? Councillor Desmarais, are there any questions to that? Yes, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to the CAO. With regards to where it says authorize the mayor and clerk, should we also include the deputy mayor due to the fact that the mayor shouldn't be signing his own agreement on the city side, correct, or no?
No, he's declared conflict. He's not voting on it. He stepped back. The decision, an official bylaw of the city, even with the mayor's on it, doesn't conflict him as directed. It is a direction of city council to authenticate and to approve an action of the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Are there any more questions to this? Is that satisfactory, Councillor Steele? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? That will be carried.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe that's all the reports this evening, members. So with that, we'll now move on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening? With no notices of motion, I will ask for a motion to adjourn this portion of this evening's agenda. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Butters, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the council portion of the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there are no addendum items.
Great, thanks, Annette. Members of council, I need a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Steele, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. If we can now go to disclosures. I have the only disclosure this evening with the bylaw, as well as the report that's outlined, and I'm sure the clerk knows which one that is. And that's due to, and because I have to, I'll state it's due to the entering into an agreement with the city as per our family business with respect to the sponsorship within the skateboard park. So with that, I will step aside from that. If I can have a councillor lift that item so you can vote on it separately, and I can stand down from the chair. With that, I'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. I do have two sets of minutes, members, and if you don't mind, I'll do them in block. I do have the minutes of the 40th meeting special of council. That's a lot of meetings. The 40th meeting special of council, October 22nd, 2012, as well as the minutes of the 41st meeting regular of council, dated October 22nd, 2012. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Danch, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Steele.
Item 11.
Thank you.
And the bylaw.
Thank you. Members of council, any further items requiring separate discussion? With none, if I can have a mover to those items that require no separate discussion, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Councillor Butters, if I can call on you to deal with the separated item.
Yes, noting the mayor's conflict, Councillor Steele, you lifted item 11.
Correct.
Could I have a seconder? Councillor Kenny, any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? And that will be carried. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can now move on to minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. I do have 4 sets of minutes, and once again, if you don't mind, I'd like to do them in block, unless you want to separate them. First off, we have the minutes of the Seniors Advisory Council meeting of September 20th, 2012. Secondly, we have the minutes of the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum Board of Management, dated September 18, 2012, as well the minutes of the Port Colborne Transit Advisory Committee meeting of August 22, 2012, and finally, the minutes of the Joint Board of Management, Niagara Region Courts of September 19, 2012. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Butters, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Madam Clerk, I'm going to need the introduction of the bylaws, but if you can read the first bylaw first, or the one that I have a conflict on, I'll allow Councillor Butters to deal with that. Okay? And then we'll do the remainder of the bylaws following that. so they can be voted on separately. Councilor Butters, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we have a mover and seconder for the bylaw that the mayor has a conflict on? I don't have the number in front of me. Could you just read
It's
that out?
bylaw 5875/129/12.
Thank you. And I have a mover is Yvonne, Councillor Doucette, and seconded by Councillor Steele. All in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, if you can introduce the remainder of the bylaws, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bylaw number 5871/125/12, being a bylaw to close temporarily to vehicular traffic sections of various streets for purposes of the 2012 Santa Claus Parade. Bylaw 5872/126/12, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Peters Excavating, Reproject 2012-14 Water Main Rehabilitation. Bylaw number 5873/127/12, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 89-2000, being a bylaw regulating traffic and parking on city roads, Woodside Drive. Bylaw 5874/128/12, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement of purchase and sale between the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne and Babcock and Wilcox Canada Limited respecting vacant lands located at the east side of Elm Street and the north side of Invertoes Road, Port Colborne.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're very welcome.
You're getting better at that job, eh?
I'm trying.
No, you're doing good. Great job. Members of council, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, I have Councillor Doucette. Any questions or comments on the bylaws? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Madam Clerk, confirmatory bylaw, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bylaw 5876/130/12, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of November 13th, 2012.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Danch, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Before I proceed to go into closed session, I do want to announce our next meetings. Our next meeting will be November 26th, Committee of the Whole and Council, beginning at 6:30 p.m. I do want to remind Council, this is very important, that on that same day, starting at 1 p.m., we are going to be having a South Niagara Healthcare Corporation meeting that will be discussing many different issues, including those critical care pathways that we discussed at the last meeting, establishing those with some of the medical experts that we're bringing forward. It's an open meeting to the public, and by all means, everyone is invited. Once again, here, third floor, Committee Room 3, November 26th, beginning at 1 p.m. And then that evening, we're going to be going into our Committee of the Whole and Council meeting here in the chamber beginning at 6:30 p.m. Following that, we do have a meeting on Monday, December 10th, 2012. Once again, Committee of the Whole and Council here in the chamber beginning at 6:30 p.m. So I will be looking for a motion to go into closed session and go into closed session to address A, the minutes of the closed session portion of the October 22nd, 2012 council meeting. B, confidential memorandum from the Director of Planning and Development dated November 2nd, 2012, concerning the potential disposition of municipal property located on Oak Ridge Crescent pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. C, confidential community and corporate services report, Corporate Services Division Report 2012-36, concerning the sale of land for tax arrears pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. D, confidential community and corporate services report, Corporate Services Division Director's Report 2012-37, concerning the sale of land for tax arrears pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And finally, E, confidential verbal report from the mayor concerning a human resource matter pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and 2392D, labor relations or employee negotiations. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Have a wonderful week.